Welcome back. In this business finance lecture, we will be going over study problem 10-5 in page 336 from the 8th edition of our textbook. Here's a view of the problem. Let's first figure the key ingredients in the problem, the givens of the problem. So, an initial cash outlay of $80,000 will generate free cash flows of $20,000 for the next 6 years. These are the key features of a project that our firm is considering. The firm will only undertake the project if the required rate of return is above 10%. And in order to decide whether the project should be undertaken or not, we have various methods, including those listed here. So let's begin with the first method. In part A, the question is asking for the payback period. Now, so pretty much payback period is just focusing on how long it will take to recover our initial investments. So notice that we initially spent $80,000 for the project, and the project over the next 6 years is supposed to generate $20,000 cash flows. So that would be year 4, year 5, and year 6. Now the question is how long it will take until we get that initial investment back. Would 1 year suffice to get that back? No, it won't. 2 years? No, the total would be 40,000, still below the initial outlay. 3 years? The total would be 60,000, but still below the threshold. How about 4 years? When we look at it, it looks like the total of these first 4 years cash flows is enough to recover our initial outlay. Therefore, the payback period in this example would be 4 years. Now let's focus on the others, net present value, profitability index, and IRR calculation. So in the case of net present value, like in our previous video, the left hand side is the key input that you are supposed to enter into your calculator, and I also have the display of your machine as well. So make sure to only enter the things on the left hand side. So let's begin. So as usual, we start by resetting our machine first. Before I go any further, you already know how to reset your machine. Then you press the CF key, you enter the initial outlay, then you enter the cash flow, start entering the cash flows. But luckily our cash flows are for the next 6 years. We are expected to receive the same amount of cash flows, so therefore we can have a shortcut and here mention that the time frame for the $20,000 cash flow is for the next 6 years. Then you press NPV, the letter I will show up in the screen. You know the required rate of return of this project is 10%. You press enter, you see it on your screen. Make sure to notice the triangle on top of that 10, and finally you press done and compute, and there you go, boom, you have your net present value. And this number again is positive, so that shows us that the project looks acceptable. For the third part, the profitability index, recall the formula. The formula was saying to add NPV and the initial outlay and then divide it by the initial outlay. We found out that our net present value in this example is $7,105.21. The initial outlay was $80,000, and dividing everything by $80,000, we make the calculation and we see that the numbers comes out as 1.09. And that number is definitely greater than 1. So as such, again, the project looks acceptable. Now at the last part, we need to calculate the IRR. Again, there are two methods for calculating the IRR. One method would rely on our previous calculation. All you do is you go back to this display where you see on the screen of your calculator F01 equals 6.00. Then you just press IRR compute. So you just press the IRR compute keys on your screen and you should see the result as 12.97%. Alternatively, a second solution would simply rely on the third row of our financial calculator. So this is PV, payment, and FV. And so we know that this is a 6-year project. We are interested in figuring the IRR, so that one would be a question mark. The initial investment in the project is $80,000, so we enter that in as a negative. And then the payments are $20,000 plus, that's why I added a plus sign at the beginning of that. And the future value, the project will have a 0 salvage value. You compute I over y, and you should get the same answer, 12.97%, in agreement with our first solution. So again, based on the IRR methodology, because 12.97% exceeds the required rate of return of 10%, based on IRR, again, we would say that the project is acceptable. Recall that we have used 4 different methods to assess a given project: the payback period, the NPV, the PI, and the IRR. And recall again that these 3, NPV, PI, and IRR, they always agree on their recommendations of whether a project should be accepted or not. Whereas payback period is an independent rule of thumb method where you decide whether where the manager actually decides whether he or she wants to undertake the project. So that would be all about this problem. I hope you enjoyed the lecture. See you soon.